Hey everybody, time for another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialist. It is the first Monday of 2025 and the first full week of 2025 as well. So welcome, glad you guys are here. Let's talk about what happened. So Rafa and I were both here today. So yeah, we hadn't really seen each other in a couple weeks with the holidays and my travel and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was good to be back in the shop here, starting, back to kind of life as normal now that the holidays are past us, and good to see Rafa after a couple weeks of not really seeing him. And Jacob came in today, haven't literally seen him in almost a month, so it was good to see that guy. So yeah, let's talk about what we did today. So Rafa once more went ahead and focused on the red buggy here. It made sense because he had a lot of momentum going, especially with respect to the dash, the wiring, etc. here. So pretty much continued in on all that. And today he got the speedometer is all wired up, the ignition switch is all wired up, the headlight switch is all wired up, and the fuel gauge, we're gonna get an original fuel gauge. We couldn't really get the aftermarket fuel gauge or aftermarket reproduction fuel gauge to work correctly with the tank because the tank sits at an angle and kind of makes the float sit in there a little bit weird. So a regular original one will allow us to dial that all in, and they have a lot more adjustment built into them than the reproduction ones, apparently. So did not know that, but that's what we found out today. Anyhow, so but yeah, the dash on this thing's pretty much all wired up. The other thing I found out that Rafa did since we caught up today that I didn't know was he actually went ahead and bled the brakes on here. So this thing's got brakes now, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so that was pretty much his day, was wiring the dash of this thing up, which on these is a fairly uncomfortable process because you pretty much lay on your back under here with your head, kind of looking up underneath there, and you're just reaching up underneath there working. And yeah, kind of not the funnest job in the world, but yeah, you can see the wirings looking all super sanitary and everything under there as you would expect. So there you go. Speaking of what he did today, he also mounted if I can find my finger, also put in the steering column bracket there, got that all bolted up, and got the steering column itself all kind of adjusted and set in there and stuff like that. So yeah, this thing's really coming together. So how about me? What did I do today? So this bus here, the Turquoise 64, we're wanting to get it over to Brian Roth, who built the motor for it, because Brian is going to go ahead and install the motor in here. So he built the motor, he's going to install it, and then it's a big motor. It's a 2110, and it's going to have, excuse me, a external oil filter, external oil cooler. So he said, let's go ahead and just have Brian do all that stuff. So he'll mount all that stuff up underneath there, plumb all that in, get the car running, maybe even take it for a little spin just to make sure it's running okay. So what I spent the day on was trying to get this bus ready for Brian so that when he puts the motor in it, that the electrical works, the brakes work, it's got shocks on it, all that stuff. So it's got door handles. So let me start off with those. So I installed the front two door handles today. We had those already. And aftermarket reproduction door handles, aftermarket reproduction actual door mechanisms. And so, not surprisingly, they just didn't work that well out of the box. On the passenger side, which was the side that I did first, when you would push in the button, it wouldn't really release the door all the way. It would release like part of the way, but not all the way. So I got in there and figured out what was going on. I had to bend one of the little tabs on the door mechanism. Not a big deal. So then I moved on to actually, let me back up a little bit. The other thing is the holes in the door handle didn't line up that great with the holes in the door. So of course I had to take a little rat tail file and elongate one of the holes in the door a little bit. You know, it's stuff almost never just goes together like a, you know, like a Lego set, like I like to say. But anyway, so moved on to the driver door. Same deal. Holes didn't really line up, so filed it. You know, and we're talking about like stretching the hole by, you know, maybe a millimeter. Not a huge difference, but it's enough to where it just wouldn't have really gone together without doing that. On this side, the driver's side, the button worked fine out of the box, so that was good. You could actually like open the thing by pushing the button. So once I got the driver door installed, I decided I should check and make sure that the keys actually do what keys are supposed to do, which is lock and unlock things. And of course, the mechanism on the handle itself was not engaging the mechanism on the door mechanism. So when you turn the key one way or the other, it was literally doing nothing as far as locking or unlocking the door. So pretty much had to pull everything back apart again and bend and tweak and massage the little sheet metal pieces on the door mechanism itself. And this was true on both sides, driver side and passenger side. They both work bitchin' now, but you know, it's one of those things where you would think that putting door handles on would be like a, you know, 10-minute job. Pretty much took about 2 hours total by the time I elongated those holes and dicked around with the mechanisms and got them to work good, including the keys and everything. So I think a lot of people who don't work on cars routinely or restore cars don't necessarily realize how long a seemingly simple job like that can take, because especially with aftermarket parts, because frankly the aftermarket parts, even the good ones, they're usually still not perfect and take some convincing to get them to work right. And in the end they work great, but you know, again, putting a pair of door handles on one of these things, it's not necessarily like a 10 or 15 minute job like you would think it would be, because ultimately things don't really line up and oftentimes don't really work without some modification. So anyway, long story short, door handles are on. So if Brian does take it for a drive, once he gets the motor in, he can actually open and close the doors and so on. So did that. Put the rear shocks on, which I hadn't put on previously. Don't know why, but I went ahead and did that. I went and bought a battery for it and put it in, and so far all the electrical that I've tested is working well. So I've tested the emergency flashers, the turn signals, the wiper motor, those things all work. I also got a starter for it, so thanks to Eddie Collins, he was able to get me a 12-volt starter today on a short notice. Put it in and wired it up, and it also works. So far, so good. I think the only major electrical thing I haven't tested yet is the headlights and the dome lights. I checked and they're actually working. The idiot lights, I don't know if they're working yet. I guess I could connect them both to ground and see if they come on the speedometer. But yeah, so far so good with electrical. I haven't tested the brakes yet because the brakes still need to be bled. I did actually work on bleeding the brakes today, some with Jacob's help, and they're just not bleeding. I don't know. I may have to try a pressure bleeder or vacuum bleeding them or something, because we tried and could not get any fluid to come through the system. So a little bit bewildered by that, but you know, these things sometimes do stuff like that to you, I think, just to be mean. But anyway, yeah, so we got to get the brakes bled, and then that's about the last major thing before we can give this thing to Brian Roth. We do still need to get a latch and install it for the rear hatch. I've found one on eBay and ordered it. Nobody seems to make a reproduction. This is, I think, 64, 5, and 6 only, so it's kind of a rare part. But I did find a used one on eBay. It's on order, so worst case, we'll, you know, somehow attach this closed, so if he takes it for a ride, the thing doesn't pop open going down the road. But you know, that's easy enough. And then when we get it back, by then hopefully we'll have the actual latch and we can put it together properly. So that's pretty much what I did today. And again, Jacob helped me bleed the brakes, and then other than that, I had him working on some of the engine components for the 67 Beetle that we're doing a restoration on. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again tomorrow. Bye.